What if I told you that the United States government spent 22 years studying something they publicly claimed didn't exist? And what if the reason they stopped wasn't because they found nothing, but because they found too much? 22 years. That's exactly how long the United States government officially studied unidentified flying objects. 22 years of classified documents, thousands of witness testimonies, hundreds of photographs, and dozens of cases that never received any rational explanation. Welcome to a world where the line between science and the paranormal blurs, where military pilots with impeccable reputations tell stories of encounters with objects that defy all known laws of physics, where radars detect things that officially don't exist. Today, we're diving into the history of the largest and most mysterious UFO investigation in human history. A project that started as an attempt to calm the public, but transformed into something far greater. A project that the government suddenly shut down, leaving more questions than answers. This is Project Blue Book. But before we begin, I need to warn you. By the end of this video, you'll question everything you thought you knew about what flies in our skies. And there's one case number 4, that still gives investigators nightmares to this day. But we'll get to that. First, let's go back to where it all started. To a summer day in 1947, when a single pilot saw something that would change human history forever. Here's something they don't teach you in history class. To understand why the American government even bothered studying flying saucers, we need to go back to the summer of 1947. The world had just recovered from World War II. The Cold War was gaining momentum. America and the Soviet Union had entered an arms race that would define the next half-century of history. On June 24, 1947, American businessman and amateur pilot Kenneth Arnold was making a routine flight over the Cascade Mountains in Washington state. The day was clear. Visibility was excellent. Arnold was searching for a crashed military transport plane, for which a $5,000 reward had been announced. What he saw instead of plane wreckage would forever change world culture. 9 brightly glowing objects were moving in a chain along the mountain ridge at a speed Arnold estimated at roughly 1,700 miles per hour. Now, pay attention to this number, because in 1947, no aircraft in the world could reach such speed. The sound barrier wasn't broken until several months later, and even then, by an experimental rocket plane. So what was flying at impossible speeds over American soil? Arnold described the object's movement as saucers skipping across water. Journalists picked up this comparison, and the term flying saucer instantly entered common usage. Over the following weeks, reports of strange objects in the sky poured in from all corners of the United States, and then from around the world. But here's where things get really strange. What happened 2 weeks later would spark one of the biggest cover-ups in American history. And the government's response? It changed 3 times in 48 hours. On July 8, 1947, the public relations officer at Roswell Army Airfield in New Mexico issued a press release stating that the military had recovered debris from a flying disc. Read that again. The military themselves announced they found a flying disc. The next day, the military changed their story. It was just a weather balloon. Then, a secret high-altitude balloon from Project Mogul, The versions kept changing, but the questions remained. Why would the military announce finding a flying disc, then immediately retract it? What did they actually find in that New Mexico desert? And why, 77 years later, are documents about Roswell still classified? The public was confused. People wanted answers. And the government realized they needed an official program to study these reports. Not because they believed in aliens, but because they feared something else, Soviet spy technology. What they discovered instead would terrify them far more than any Soviet aircraft. But that revelation wouldn't come until later. First, they needed to create a system, a project, a cover. The government's first attempt to explain UFOs ended with an order to burn all the evidence. I'm not making this up. In January 1948, the U.S. Air Force launched the first official UFO study program under the code name SIGN. The name wasn't chosen randomly. The military was looking for signs that the Soviet Union possessed technologies America didn't know about. Project SIGN was based at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, the very same place where, according to rumors, the Roswell debris was stored. Coincidence? In this story, there are no coincidences. The project team consisted of engineers, scientists, and military analysts. Their task was to collect UFO sighting reports, analyze them, and find rational explanations. Most cases were easily explained. Meteors, high-altitude balloons, the planet Venus, experimental aircraft, hallucinations, hoaxes. But some cases couldn't be explained by anything, and one of them would cost a man his life. Let that sink in. A decorated war hero, an experienced pilot who survived combat over Nazi Germany, died chasing something in American skies, something the government still can't explain. The official explanation: he was chasing a high-altitude skyhook balloon and lost consciousness from oxygen deprivation at high altitude. But here's what they don't tell you. Documents confirming the existence of such a balloon in that area on that day were never released, because they don't exist. After Mantell's death, the Project SIGN team did something unprecedented. They compiled a secret document known as the Estimate of the Situation. What was in it? A conclusion so shocking that it had to be destroyed. The document stated some UFOs might be spacecraft of extraterrestrial origin. This wasn't written by conspiracy theorists. This was written by Air Force scientists and engineers, and it was sent directly to Air Force Chief of Staff General Hoyt Vandenberg. The general's response? He rejected the report's conclusions and ordered all copies destroyed, officially, because the evidence was insufficient. But think about this. If the evidence was insufficient, why destroy it? Why not just file it away? Unless the evidence pointed to something they couldn't accept. In December 1948, Project SIGN was renamed Project Grudge. The name itself spoke to the military's new attitude toward this subject. Grudge, meaning resentment, displeasure. The new directive was clear. Find explanations at any cost, even if you have to make them up. Project Grudge existed until 1952. During this time, hundreds of cases were closed with an explained label, even when the explanations seemed forced. But in the summer of '52, something happened that made the explain everything approach impossible. Something that happened not over some remote desert, but over the capital of the United States, over the White House itself. What I'm about to tell you is not a movie plot. This happened in real life over the most protected airspace on Earth and was witnessed by dozens of trained professionals. July 1952, the capital of the United States, the most heavily guarded airspace in the world. On the night of July 19th to 20th, radar operators at Washington National Airport detected a group of unidentified objects. But these weren't ordinary blips on a screen. The objects were moving at about 100 miles per hour, then suddenly accelerated to 7,000 miles per hour. In a single instant, no acceleration curve, no gradual speed increase, just 7,000 miles per hour. For context, the fastest military jet in 1952 had barely reached 700 miles per hour. These objects were moving 10 times faster, and they could stop instantly and turn at right angles. Physics doesn't allow this, but they did it anyway. They appeared and disappeared from radar screens at will. They seemed to be playing with the operators. Civilian aircraft pilots reported strange lights. One airliner crew observed the objects for 14 minutes. Controllers were in a panic. F-94 Starfire interceptors were scrambled, the best fighters America had. And here's where it gets terrifying. When the interceptors approached, the objects vanished. The moment the jets turned away, the objects returned. Like they were watching, like they knew. A week later, on the night of July 26th to 27th, it all happened again. This time, objects were seen directly over the White House. Let me repeat that. Unidentified objects moving at impossible speeds hovered over the residents of the United States. Again, interceptors were scrambled. Again, the objects played cat and mouse with them. The press exploded. Headlines screamed about an invasion. Pentagon phones were burning from calls by alarmed citizens. This was the largest wave of UFO reports in history. On July 29th, the Air Force held its largest press conference since World War II. Major General John Sanford had the culmination on the verge of panic. His explanation? Temperature inversion, an atmospheric phenomenon that creates false radar returns. But here's what the general didn't mention. Veteran controllers who had worked with radars for decades said they knew exactly what temperature inversion looked like. What they saw that night was not temperature inversion. It was something solid, something intelligent, something that was watching them. After the Washington incident, it became clear Project Grudge wasn't cutting it. The explain everything away approach had failed spectacularly. They needed something new, something bigger, something that at least looked like real science. Thus was born Project Blue Book, and for the next 17 years, it would collect evidence of something the government was desperate to deny. For the first time in history, the U.S. government was about to take UFOs seriously. Or at least, that's what they wanted the public to believe. In March 1952, Captain Edward Ruppelt took charge of the revamped UFO research program. It was Ruppelt who introduced the term UFO, unidentified flying object, instead of the emotionally charged flying saucer. He wanted to give the research a scientific, impartial character. Under Ruppelt's leadership, the project received a new name, Blue Book, and a new mandate. The team was to collect data systematically, using standardized report forms. Witnesses were interviewed in detail. Photographs and radar recordings were analyzed by experts. For the first time, UFO research took on a truly scientific character. Ruppelt believed in objectivity. He didn't try to explain cases in advance or dismiss witnesses. He sought the truth, whatever it might be, and what he found would haunt him for the rest of his life. Over its 22 years of existence, Project Blue Book documented 12,618 UFO sighting cases. The majority, 78%, were explained as natural phenomena, conventional aircraft, satellites, planets, or hoaxes. But 701 cases remained. Let that number sink in. 701 cases that the best scientists and analysts of the Air Force couldn't explain. 701 encounters that defied physics, logic, and everything we thought we knew about our world. These weren't reports from drunk farmers or attention-seeking hoaxers. These were testimonies from military pilots, police officers, air traffic controllers, and scientists. People whose jobs depended on accurate observation. I'm about to show you 4 of the most disturbing cases from Project Blue Book. The last one, case number 4, was so unexplainable that it inspired one of the most famous science fiction films ever made. But let's start with a case that's not just unexplained, it's a case where someone disappeared. Case number 1. And a warning, we still don't know what happened to these men. Lakeland, Michigan, 1953. On June 6th, air traffic controllers detected an unidentified object on radar moving over Lake Superior. An F-89 Scorpion interceptor was scrambled with 2 crew members, Lieutenant Felix Moncla and radar operator Robert Wilson. The interceptor pursued the object for 300 miles. Controllers watched the chase unfold on their screens, guiding Moncla toward the unknown contact. Then something happened that no one could explain. Before the controller's eyes, the interceptor's blip on the radar moved closer and closer to the unidentified object. And then the 2 blips merged into one. And then both blips disappeared. Not the interceptor breaking off pursuit, not the object escaping. Both of them gone in an instant. Neither the aircraft, nor the pilots, nor any wreckage were ever found. The search continued for weeks. Lake Superior was scoured. Nothing. 2 men vanished into thin air while chasing something that shouldn't exist. The official version? The interceptor collided with a Canadian aircraft. But there's one problem with that explanation. Canadian authorities denied the presence of any aircraft in that area. There was nothing for them to collide with. So what swallowed Lieutenant Moncla and radar operator Wilson? 70 years later, we still don't know. Case number 2. A dogfight with something that wasn't human. Lafayette, Indiana, 1948. On October 1st, test pilot George Gorman engaged in an aerial dogfight with an unidentified glowing object over the city. For 27 minutes, almost half an hour, Gorman tried to pursue the object in his P-51 Mustang fighter. But here's what made this case unique. The object fought back. It made impossible maneuvers, sharp right-angled turns, sudden stops, vertical climbs at speeds no aircraft could achieve. And when Gorman tried to close in, the object would rush straight at him like a missile, then pull up at the last possible moment. It was testing him, playing with him, showing him what it could do. Gorman was an experienced pilot, a war veteran who had seen combat. He wasn't prone to fantasies. His testimony was detailed and consistent. Controllers and other pilots confirmed the sighting. After the encounter, Gorman's aircraft was examined. The Geiger counter showed elevated radiation levels. Project Blue Book classified this case as unexplained, but unexplained doesn't mean unreal. Something was in that sky with George Gorman, something intelligent, something that wanted him to know it was there. Case number 3, the night when cars stopped working. Texas, 1957. This case is particularly disturbing because it wasn't just seen, it was felt. On November 2nd, several patrol cars and civilian witnesses observed a glowing object over the town of Levelland. But what happened next defied all explanation. When the object approached the vehicle, the engine would die. The headlights would go out. All electrical systems would fail. The car would become a dead piece of metal. When the object moved away, everything started working again. 15 independent witnesses in different locations reported identical symptoms. This wasn't mass hysteria. These were people who didn't know each other, scattered across several miles, all experiencing the exact same phenomenon. Whatever this thing was, it could disable technology at will. Think about the implications of that. Think about what that means for our military, for our defenses, for our entire technological civilization. The Air Force's official explanation? Ball lightning and wet ignition wires due to rain. But there's a problem. Meteorological records show there was no rain that night. And ball lightning doesn't systematically disable vehicles for hours across multiple miles. They lied. They had to, because the truth was too terrifying to admit. Case number 4, the case that inspired Steven Spielberg. Portage County, Ohio, 1966. This is the one that haunts investigators to this day. On April 17th, at 5 a.m., police officer Dale Spohr noticed a glowing object hovering over the road. Thinking it was an accident or fire, he approached. The object rose into the air, and it began to move away, slowly, as if inviting him to follow. Spohr did follow, and what started as a routine check became an 85-mile chase across 2 states. The chase lasted nearly an hour. 3 more police cruisers joined the pursuit. 4 different officers and 4 different vehicles all watched the same object, a glowing disc approximately 30 to 40 feet in diameter. They chased it through Ohio. They chased it into Pennsylvania. They watched it the entire time. It was not a star. It was not a planet. It was not a satellite. It was something solid, something real, something that led them on a chase across state lines like it wanted to be followed. As dawn broke, the object moved toward the rising sun, and as the sunlight grew brighter, it faded away, or perhaps it simply left. Project Blue Book's official explanation: the officers spent an hour chasing the planet Venus and a satellite. Dale Spohr was devastated by this verdict. His career was destroyed. His marriage fell apart. He went from respected officer to public laughingstock because he told the truth. Years later, he said, "I know the difference between a star and something I chased for 85 miles. This case so deeply affected filmmaker Steven Spielberg that he recreated it in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. In the movie, the witness is vindicated. In real life, Dale Spohr was abandoned by the very government he served. 4 cases, 4 unexplained encounters, and these are just 4 out of 701. The question isn't whether these things exist. The evidence says they do. The real question is, why is the government so desperate to convince us they don't? What I'm about to tell you will make you angry. Because this is the story of how the government rigged a scientific investigation, and we have the proof in their own words. By the mid-60s, public pressure had reached its peak. UFO reports were coming in by the hundreds. Congress demanded answers. The Air Force was tired of endless questions and criticism. In 1966, a decision was made. An independent scientific review was needed. They needed an authoritative scientist who would close this matter once and for all. The choice fell on physicist Edward Condon from the University of Colorado. He was allocated $500,000 in 2 years to study the UFO phenomenon. Condon's team was to deliver a final verdict. Was there any scientific basis for studying unidentified flying objects? Sounds reasonable, right? An objective scientific study. Let the evidence speak for itself. Except it was rigged from the start. And we know this because someone leaked the internal memo. Before the research even began, project coordinator Robert Lowe wrote a memo outlining the real strategy. Here are his exact words. The trick would be to describe the project to the public as a totally objective study, but to the scientific community, present the image of a group of non-believers trying their best to be objective, but having an almost zero expectation of finding a saucer. Read that again. The trick. They called it a trick. The study was designed to fail before it even started. When this memo leaked to the press, it caused a scandal. Several team members resigned in protest against the leadership's bias. They knew the fix was in. Nevertheless, the research continued. In 1969, the scientific study of unidentified flying objects was published, the so-called Condon Report. The conclusion was unequivocal. Further study of UFOs held no scientific interest. 22 years of research could be closed. Case closed. Nothing to see here. Move along. But here's what they hoped you wouldn't notice. If you actually read the report itself, not Condon's summary, but the actual data, a completely different picture emerges. About 30% of the cases studied never received explanations. Some of them were deemed remarkable and deserving of further study by the scientists who investigated them. The evidence said one thing, the conclusion said another. Edward Condon wrote a conclusion that contradicted his own report's findings. Critics were outraged. Scientists who participated in the study spoke out, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. The government had their excuse. On December 17, 1969, Project Blue Book was officially closed. 22 years of investigation, 12,000 cases, 701 unexplained encounters, all swept under the rug by a rigged report written by a man who decided the conclusion before looking at the evidence. But that's not the end of the story, because while Blue Book was being shut down, other agencies were just getting started. Here's the question that should keep you up at night. If they found nothing, why did they work so hard to hide it? The official version is simple. No UFO posed a threat to national security. No UFO demonstrated technology beyond modern science, and there was no evidence of extraterrestrial origin of the observed objects. But let's look at what they actually found. 701 cases with no explanation. Witnesses including military pilots, police officers, controllers, astronomers, people trained to observe and report accurately. Objects tracked on radar. Objects that left physical traces. Objects that disabled electrical systems. And their conclusion was Nothing to see here? Something doesn't add up. There are several theories about why Blue Book was really shut down. Theory 1. Exhaustion. The Air Force simply got tired of dealing with thousands of reports, most of which turned out to be false alarms. The Vietnam War was draining resources. UFOs were a distraction they couldn't afford. Theory 2. Embarrassment. Every unexplained case was a public admission that the U.S. Air Force didn't control its own airspace, that something was flying over America that they couldn't catch, couldn't explain, and couldn't stop. Better to close the program and pretend the problem didn't exist. Theory 3, and this is the one that should concern you most. They found their answers. But those answers were so disturbing, so paradigm-shattering, that they could never be shared with the public. There's documentary evidence that not all UFO information went to Blue Book. The juiciest cases, especially those involving nuclear facilities, were handled by other far more classified programs. Programs whose names we still don't know. In the 1980s, the Freedom of Information Act forced the release of thousands of FBI and CIA documents related to UFOs. Many dated from the Blue Book years, but were never shared with that project. Blue Book was collecting data, but someone else was keeping the real secrets. While Project Blue Book was explaining away UFOs as weather balloons and planets, other agencies were writing very different reports. Reports they classified for decades. Reports that described things that shouldn't exist. The FBI maintained its own UFO files since 1947. One memo in particular has become legendary. It was written by Agent Guy Hottle in 1950 and described something found in New Mexico. Here's what the memo says, and remember, this is an official FBI document. 3 flying saucers had been recovered in New Mexico. Each one was occupied by 3 bodies of human shape, but only 3 feet tall, dressed in metallic cloth of a very fine texture. 3 craft, 9 bodies. Official FBI documentation. The FBI now claims this was unverified, second-hand information. Maybe so, but why was it recorded in official files? Why was it classified for decades? And why, when researchers finally got access to it, did it become the most viewed document in the FBI's online vault? The CIA created its own UFO study group in 1952, parallel to Blue Book, but completely independent. They didn't share information. They didn't coordinate. It was like Blue Book didn't exist to them. The CIA's UFO documents weren't declassified until the 1990s. 40 years of secrecy. What were they hiding? And then there's the National Security Agency. When researchers filed Freedom of Information requests in the 80s, the NSA acknowledged something remarkable. They possessed hundreds of UFO-related documents. Hundreds, but they refused to release them. National security, they said. Too sensitive, even after 40 years. Think about that. What kind of information about UFOs could possibly threaten national security? Unless that information proves something the government desperately wants to deny? Project Blue Book was the public face of UFO research. It was designed to explain, to debunk, to reassure. But behind closed doors, other agencies were taking the phenomenon very, very seriously. The question is, what did they find? For 50 years after Blue Book closed, the government's official position was clear. UFOs don't exist. We don't study them. Case closed. They were lying. In 2017, the New York Times published an article that changed everything. It revealed that from 2007 to 2012, the Pentagon had secretly funded a program called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Budget, $22 million. Purpose, studying anomalous aerospace threats. In other words, UFOs. They had been studying UFOs the entire time. The program's director, military intelligence officer Luis Elizondo, resigned in protest over excessive secrecy. He went public, and he brought evidence. The videos he released, tic-tac, gimbal, go fast, showed objects performing maneuvers that should be impossible. No wings, no visible propulsion, speeds and accelerations that would kill any human pilot, right-angled turns at supersonic speeds. And in 2020, the Pentagon did something unprecedented. They confirmed the videos were real. They admitted U.S. military pilots had encountered objects they could not identify or explain. 50 years of denial. 50 years of ridicule for witnesses. 50 years of weather balloons and Venus and mass hysteria. All of it was a lie. In 2021, the Director of National Intelligence released a report to Congress, the first official UFO report since Blue Book closed. It examined 144 military encounters since 2004. How many were explained? One. Exactly one. 143 unexplained encounters with unknown objects in restricted military airspace. Objects demonstrating technology far beyond anything in our arsenal. History isn't just repeating itself, it's accelerating. And 70 years after Project Blue Book began, we're finally being forced to confront the question the government has been avoiding since 1947. What is flying in our skies? So what did we actually learn from 22 years of Project Blue Book? We learned that most UFO sightings have ordinary explanations. People make mistakes. They misidentify planets, aircraft, satellites. They see what they want to see or what they fear to see. This is human nature, and it's expected. But we also learned something else, something that can't be explained away. There exists a persistent percentage of cases, roughly 5 to 10%, that defy all conventional explanation. Cases with multiple independent witnesses. Cases with radar confirmation from multiple stations. Cases where physical traces were left behind. Cases where electrical systems were disabled. These cases don't go away when you close a project. They don't disappear when you write a dismissive report. They persist. They accumulate. And they demand answers. What are these objects? There are really only a few possibilities. Option 1, secret military technology. Ours or someone else's. But some of these objects have been observed since the 1940s, demonstrating capabilities we can't match even today. If any nation had this technology 80 years ago, where is it now? Option 2, unknown natural phenomena. Atmospheric effects we haven't cataloged. But natural phenomena don't track aircraft. They don't disable cars. They don't lead police officers on 85-mile chases. Option 3, misidentification and hoaxes. But this doesn't explain cases with radar confirmation, multiple trained witnesses, and physical evidence. Option 4, something else. Something not from here, something we're not prepared to accept. Project Blue Book didn't give us an answer. Maybe they never intended to. Maybe they found answers they couldn't share. Or maybe, and this is somehow the most terrifying option, even they don't know. When I started researching this story, I expected to find a tale of Cold War paranoia. A story about people seeing things that weren't there, fueled by nuclear anxiety and science fiction movies. That's not what I found. What I found was 12,618 documented cases, 22 years of official investigation, the best scientists and analysts the Air Force had to offer, billions of dollars in today's money spent trying to understand something. And at the end of it all, 701 cases with no explanation, 0 answers. And the project shut down not because they solved the mystery, but because they couldn't. The government told us they found nothing, but their own documents tell a different story. Their own investigators wrote reports warning of things they couldn't explain, and those reports were buried, classified, destroyed. Why? What did they find that was so disturbing it had to be hidden from the public? What answers are locked in vaults we'll never access? And what is still flying in our skies 77 years after Kenneth Arnold saw 9 objects over the Cascade Mountains? Some questions don't have comfortable answers. Some truths are too large to accept. And some secrets are kept not because the public can't handle them, but because the people keeping them can't handle them either. One thing is certain, the sky holds secrets. It has always held secrets. And somewhere out there, whether in a classified archive or in the infinite darkness of space, the truth is waiting. The question is, are we ready to find it? That's all for today. If this investigation opened your eyes, smash that subscribe button and leave a like. The algorithm buries videos like this, so your engagement literally determines whether others get to see it. In the comments, tell me, which case disturbed you the most? The vanished pilots over Lake Superior? The dogfight that left radiation on the plane? The cars that stopped working, or the chase that destroyed an honest cop's life? And here's something to think about as you go about your day. In 2023, Congress held public hearings where military witnesses testified under oath about retrieving craft of non-human origin. Under oath. This isn't conspiracy theory anymore. This is congressional testimony. If you want to know what they revealed, let me know in the comments. That might be our next video. Until then, keep watching the skies, because whatever is up there, it's definitely watching us.